What is up, everybody? It is your boy Toxie Boyo, and we are going to talk about Dragon Ball Super's triumphant return and the future of the franchise now that it is back. And thank God that this announcement was made when it was, because I was probably about a week or two away from making a video about how Dragon Ball Super was cooked and probably never going to return. So it really worked out pretty well for me and for you guys, because you're here now. Now, before we begin, if you are a fan of Dragon Ball much like I am, then I would love for you to do three things. One, like this video. Two, subscribe for more Dragon Ball related content now that there's stuff to talk about again. And three, let me know who your favorite non-Saiyan Dragon Ball character is. For me, it's easily Piccolo, or... oh, I can't say Cell, can I? Because he's part Saiyan. I guess it's Piccolo. It's probably going to be Piccolo for a lot of you guys too, but you might say Krillin, Tenshinhan, Roshi, Yamcha, Bulma, Chi-Chi. I'm actually very curious. Could be Ox King, so let's have some fun. Now, first we can address the fact that the Galactic Patrol arc, also known as the Moro arc, is finally getting an adaptation. Thank God. It's not coming out till next year, though, so, after 6 years of waiting, to be told that you have one more year to wait is kind of crazy, but I think it's probably going to be okay, because we do have Dragon Ball Super Beerus coming out soon in the meantime, which is the fourth version of the events of the film Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, which was, a film, and then it was retold as as the first 12 episodes of the Dragon Ball Super anime, and then obviously those events are again repeated at the beginning of the Dragon Ball Super manga. So this is the fourth time we've gone through this, and as such, I've seen a lot of discourse on Twitter and on TikTok and really all over the place regarding what Dragon Ball Super Beerus is and whether or not Dragon Ball Super needs a remake. And I think that that confusion and that discourse does come from a misunderstanding of what exactly we're looking at here. Dragon Ball Super Beerus is not a remake, at least not in the sense that like Hunter x Hunter 2011 or Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood are. It's not, from the ground up, a retelling of the same events. And it's also not a re-edit to trim down the fat or get rid of filler the way that Dragon Ball Z Kai was. This is not Dragon Ball Super Kai. So if it's not a remake and it's not Kai, what is it? It's something in between. It's a redo. Like, there are new cuts of animation. Yes, that's true. They've shown some of those off in the trailer, like when Vegeta turned Super Saiyan 2 to fight Beerus. That is new cuts of animation. That beginning sequence with Beerus waking up, that's new. But we've also seen some frames that are from the original Dragon Ball Super anime with a facelift, because that's really what Dragon Ball Super needs, if anything, is a facelift. The first, well, I'm going to say, to be honest, the entire show, up until the Universe Survival arc, has a lot of iffy animation, a lot of iffy visuals. Characters are off model very often. Obviously, episode 5 lives in infamy. So I do think that a facelift is necessary. It could be argued whether something that is only just a little over a decade old needs to be touched again at all. I think, if we're being completely honest, it has to do with Toriyama-san's passing. Contrary to popular belief, Toriyama did not actually write Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, at least not the same way that he wrote Resurrection F. He kind of gave the team at Toei an outline, and that outline was loosely followed for Battle of Gods, the beginning of the Super anime, and the beginning of the Super manga. So it's three different interpretations of the general same ideas that Toriyama had. We've been told that this version of events is being designed to get as close to Toriyama's original vision as possible. I think that the motivation behind this is simple, honestly. Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, even though it's probably your preferred version of events, is probably the least canon, right? We have an anime canon and we have a manga canon when it comes to Dragon Ball Super. Two alternate timelines that haven't really diverged, with very different events having taken place from one version to the next. For instance, in the manga, Gohan defeats Kefla. In the anime, Goku defeats Kefla in pretty stylish fashion. Now, you may believe, because it's the easiest solution, that this is being redone in order to get closer to the manga. Well, that's not necessarily true either, because again, the manga is just an interpretation of Toriyama's ideas. He didn't write the Dragon Ball Super manga. He gave Toyotaro ideas and he put it together, that kind of thing. So I think based on notes and what Toyotaro learned from Toriyama and from conversations that were had between Toriyama and Toei, they are shaving down the fat and trying to give us a definitive, this is, you know, the one to rule them all interpretation of what Toriyama wanted for Battle of Gods. And that's why we have Beerus waking up again, which was skipped over in the Dragon Ball Super anime, and I think in the manga as well. I think he was already awake. The only time we see him wake up is in the Battle of Gods movie, which again is decanonized by the anime, because the anime was made to take the place of the movie, if that makes sense. But honestly, I think that this does go deeper than just Beerus. This might be, you know, a trial run, but they have already confirmed that they're going to be doing the same for at least Resurrection F. They're going to be trimming down the fat again and giving us a more definitive version of those events. Now, Toriyama did write the Resurrection F film, but again, that was decanonized by the way that events shook out in the manga. Or not in the manga, in the anime. So, you know, Goku being Super Saiyan Blue when he got shot by Sorbet, that's the canon version of events. I do think that that is something that will definitely help from a facelift as well, new cuts of animation, and trimming the fat is always going to go a long way. I don't know how much new voice acting we're going to get, especially in the Japanese version, but that's you know, the fun of watching these things week to week. I don't exactly remember when Dragon Ball Super Beerus starts, but I will be watching these episodes as they air, maybe on the Patreon doing like live watches so that I don't get shot to oblivion by Toei for copyright reasons, but trust and believe we're going to be talking a lot about that. Now, this does come with a caveat. Unfortunately, Tadayoshi Yamamuro is the animation director of Dragon Ball Super Beerus. I don't love his art style, if we're being completely honest. I don't love the way that he kind of makes the characters look like plastic. That Raging Blast art style, if you're familiar with the box art from Raging Blast 2, that's kind of what we had for the bulk of early Dragon Ball Super, and it looks like we're going right back in there. Now, if we're being honest, that's probably for the sake of visual consistency, because they are using old animation as well as new cuts of animation, and it would be jarring for the art style to just change drastically from one scene to the next or from one episode to the next. So I completely understand why they would have Yamamuro head this again, because they are using work that he supervised all those years ago. That totally makes sense to me. I'm not happy about it. I'm not going to say that I'm thrilled and over the moon over it, but it does make sense to me. Now, we could discuss, you know, animation philosophy and politics regarding Beerus and Frieza till the cows come home, but I want to talk about what comes after, because I've seen people be like, well, they could potentially redo the entire show like this, because if we're being honest, Dragon Ball Super is a 131 episode anime that could easily be 64 episodes, similarly to, you know, Dragon Ball GT. You probably don't want to get rid of half the show, but look, they're turning 24 episodes of animation between the Beerus and Frieza arcs into 12 episodes, so they're very clearly willing to get rid of significant fluff and filler. That works for me greatly. We don't need an entire episode dedicated to Goku and Android 17 trying to save the animals. We don't need an entire episode dedicated to Roshi trying to get over his perversion. We don't need an entire episode devoted to somebody trying to play Gohan in a movie, but that person actually being evil. We don't need a whole episode devoted to Vegeta being cloned into a purple grape jelly man on some random planet. Like, I understand what the concept of filler is. Dragon Ball is no stranger to filler. But if we have a chance to trim that stuff out and get as close to a Dragon Ball Super Kai concept as we can, I think it's worth doing, just out of respect for Toriyama-san and his work. Now, I'm not saying we need to get rid of whole concepts, like, we can keep the Universe 6 tournament, obviously, we can keep the Universe 9 tournament as well. I love both of those. But we can probably trim some of the fat of, Goku's powers not working after he fights Hit, things like that. I think that there's plenty of material that can be, trimmed down. Boo ends up not having a presence in the Universe 6 tournament, and, I don't know, less Boo, I think, is good, just because he doesn't ever do anything. I know he's a joke character, but, he's taking screen time from characters that actually matter. And maybe, just maybe, and we're going into hopium territories here, I've got my tinfoil hat on, maybe, just maybe, this version of the Tournament of Power doesn't have Frieza in it, but it's got Cell. Obviously, they can't make a change that drastic because Frieza is alive after the Tournament of Power, and he shows up a couple times, so you can't get rid of that. I just would personally have really liked to have Cell in the Tournament of Power. I think it would make sense. I also think it would make a whole lot more sense to have Yamcha in the Tournament of Power than Roshi. Pretty sure Yamcha's stronger than Roshi. Oh, well, he can do the Evil Containment Wave. Teach it to Yamcha. Anybody can do the Evil Containment Wave. Anybody can do the Evil Containment Wave. Piccolo can do it. He knows how it works, or at least he should. He's got experience from the other side of it. Well, maybe he's got muscle memory from his dad. But no, I think the arc that I'm the absolute most interested in getting a redo or a facelift is the Goku Black arc. I think that story-wise and visually speaking, that arc is hurting quite a lot, which is unfortunate because it's got the most fun concept out of any of them. Obviously, martial arts tournaments are at the center of Dragon Ball's identity. They've been there since the very beginning. Having one be like the main finale of the Dragon Ball Super anime is not a problem for me. But I think that an evil Goku is pretty interesting. Now, I have been more than vocal here on this channel about how the story of the Goku Black arc doesn't make any sense, regarding the fact that Zamasu is trying to wipe out all remaining humans in a timeline that's already been decimated by androids, so there's not very many mortals to get rid of anyway, so it really shouldn't take very long. But it's in a universe that he doesn't live in, and it's in a timeline that doesn't really exist anymore, and the whole thing takes place in a time loop that could not have had a beginning point. I don't know that a redo is going to fix all of those narrative problems. You would really have to redo the whole arc from the ground up and make significant changes, but I think it's worth it. I really do, because I want to see more visual consistency between the manga and the anime's versions of the story. That's one where I definitely recommend reading it. Read the Goku Black arc rather than watching it. It's so much more interesting, and there's actually like clear delineation when you see Goku and Vegeta start using Mastered Super Saiyan Blue, which is an important thing that never really comes up in the anime. And like the switching between Super Saiyan Blue and Super Saiyan God doesn't get mentioned until the Tournament of Power in the anime. That could be cool to have it pop up. It would also be nice to see Vegeta turn Super Saiyan God before the events of the Broly movie. But maybe that would lessen the impact retroactively of him actually finally pulling it off on the big screen. I don't know. I guess that's up to you to determine what you would prefer. Not that any of us talking about it in a YouTube video comment section is really going to have any bearing on how it actually goes. But all of that is secondary to what we actually have lined up as facts. We know that we're getting Beerus again. We know that we're getting Frieza again. And in 2027, we're getting the Galactic Patrol. We don't know how many episodes that's going to be, but they announced it as an arc rather than Dragon Ball Super Season 2. So I think that we're going to get away from the old methodology of, we have a time slot on Saturday, we're airing episodes until we run out of stuff to air. I think that we are just going to take a more seasonal approach like a lot of anime are doing now, you know, with Crunchyroll and streaming in general becoming the more popular way to watch anime. We don't have as much filler to deal with anymore. Shows don't necessarily run indefinitely because they've got a time slot they don't want to lose. You don't have 2 years worth of completely irrelevant episodes that don't matter by the end of it. We have 12 to 24 episodes come out for a couple of months, and then the show goes away until the next batch of episodes is ready. I think that that's really the future of what we're looking at here with Dragon Ball Super. We're probably going to have Beerus, and then a couple months, maybe 2 or 3 months before Frieza, and then by the time Frieza is done, that's when the Galactic Patrol will be ready to start, and once that's over, maybe they'll have the Universe 6 tournament ready to go, or, I don't know, I don't really know how it's going to happen after that, but, you know, chronologically speaking, after the Galactic Patrol arc is the Gas Granola Heaters Cerealians arc. That one's probably also going to air seasonally. And then, I mean, after that is Superhero, so who knows what's going to happen with that. That actually does bear discussing. Are we going to adapt the more recent movies? Because as things currently stand, the only 2 actual canon Dragon Ball movies are Super Broly and Superhero. So, do we take the approach that we had taken with the last 2 Z movies, and do we decanonize those and give a more definitive version by running 6 episodes that tell that same story? Or do we leave them as is because they've got the budget, they've got the animation and everything? Or, I don't know, something in between? Like, I don't know. I think for the sake of having like a definitive Dragon Ball Super watching experience, which is what I think that they're trying to go for here, having just one Dragon Ball Super show to watch that covers everything that's happened since Toriyama took over again. I think that's like the ultimate goal here. We'll have Dragon Ball Super Definitive, which will just have Beerus, Frieza, Universe 6, Goku Black, Universe 9, Tournament of Power, Broly, Moro, Gas, you know, Superhero, and then whatever's going on after that. I think that for the purpose of having all of that laid out so that your average person can just watch all of Dragon Ball Super, they probably will be revisiting those events. Who's to say so early on if that's going to be a good or bad thing, especially because, again, we don't know for sure that that's actually what's going to happen. But we're speculating, we're having fun. You know, that's the whole point of this. We're having fun talking about the future of Dragon Ball Super. So yeah, for my money, I do think that they're probably going to reanimate the events of Super Broly and Superhero. Probably doesn't help that Superhero is in such a unique visual style that they didn't even attempt again for anything Dragon Ball related that comes after. We're obviously not seeing it again for Dragon Ball Super Beerus. We didn't see it for Dragon Ball Daima. They didn't incorporate it into Super Dragon Ball Heroes. It was an experiment, I think, to see if it worked so that they could make Sandland. I think that's all it's really for. But then again, Super Broly also looks visually distinct from the entire rest of the franchise. It looks a lot more like One Piece. So, who knows? But whatever it ends up being, I'm excited. I'm a big Dragon Ball fan. I've been waiting for almost a decade for Dragon Ball Super to come back in some sort of meaningful way. You know, the manga has taken very long hiatuses as well. So, who knows? Maybe I'm not gonna be the one to say that this is all ramping up towards some sort of Dragon Ball finale event, but who knows? Who knows what could happen? Maybe there's a reboot coming. Like literally anything can happen. Like we're going back and we're starting over from the beginning of Dragon Ball Super. We're getting a new arc. The sky is the limit. Anything could happen. Dragon Ball is back, baby. If you're as excited as I am, let me know in the comments and tell me what you hope gets reanimated the absolute most out of the entirety of the original run of Dragon Ball Super. It could be one of the movies, it could be one of the arcs, it could be a specific fight, it could be something that happens in the manga and not the anime that you hope gets into the anime this time around. Whatever it is, whatever you think, comment below and educate me. And as always, if you want more from me, this video is on the screen right now.